everyone, welcome to How to Be an Intuitive Badass. I'm so glad that you guys made the jump. You decided to come and join this workshop. Clearly, it means that you want to connect with your inner voice, and I think that's a beautiful first step. Just acknowledging that you have this inner voice, this connection to your higher power is very, very important in order for this course to work. So I want to tell you guys, let's do an introduction. I want to tell you guys a little bit about me. I know most of you follow me on Instagram, so you have seen quite a bit of my story. But for those that don't know me that well, my name is Shawn Engel. I run Witchy Wisdoms on Instagram, which is a business consulting firm for witch entrepreneurs. However, I do quite a bit of metaphysical work. I teach people about their intuition. I read tarot. I work with pendulums. So intuition is a big cornerstone of my career and has helped move me forward in everything that I'm doing. So I want to tell you guys a little bit about what my life looked like before my intuition kicked in. And there are three really pivotal anecdotes that I have for you. So the first is before I moved to New York City, which was about 7 years ago, I got in a really bad car accident. It was so bad that I had to go through physical therapy. I couldn't move my arms. They were like stuck like this for quite a while. I had to do that little like hand crank. And I didn't have the best relationship with my parents at the time. And my car was totaled, by the way, so that's how bad this car accident was. And they pressured me into getting a new car. And so I was petrified. I had PTSD from this entire incident, and yet I was getting in my ear constantly, when are you going to get a new car? You need to get a new car. You need to get a new car. So what ended up happening was I went into Craigslist, and I found this guy who was selling this car in a parking garage, and the car was sputtering. It was clearly, I had this gut feeling that this was not going to work out. And I did it anyways because I was so distant from my intuition, and I just wanted to get it over with. And I was acting from fear, and I was acting from ego. And I was like, handed this guy over $2,000 in cash and couldn't even drive the car home. That's instance number one. Number two, I worked as a general manager for a restaurant for quite a bit. And there were so many signs, and my intuition, had I listened, could have pointed me in such a good direction. But even in the interview, and I've never GM'd before, I was working in the service industry, and so this was like a dream job to get this big step up. And in the interview, they were like, this is great, cool, we're not going to train you at all, we're just going to hand you over the business. Now, anyone's intuition would have bing, bing, call that experience or call it intuition, red flags would have been raised. And I could have saved myself a lot of grief because that place ended up literally burning down in flames as far as profits go. I was fired in a really horrible way. So many things happened in that restaurant that could have been avoided. And then the third one, which is, I think you guys have heard me talk about this all the time, my ex-boyfriend, who was a heroin addict. And again, my intuition was screaming at me, something is wrong, something is not right. And I was not listening. I was blinded by ego. I was blinded by fear of being left alone. I stayed with this man for 9 months, gave him $4,000, and moved in with him. So these are three things that were very pivotal in my life that could have saved me so much money had I listened to my intuition. And that's why I really want to teach you guys how to tap into that divine source and how to save yourself some grief. So, now that I use my intuition, I've avoided so many dealings with shady clients that ended up being, not so savory, that couldn't fulfill payments. Obviously there is a profit margin, or there is a margin of loss, but all in all, my intuition has steered me clear of some very, very key things, and I have them in my mind of that, had I not listened to it, would have been one of those anecdotes that I previously told you. So, which brings me to the very exciting first couple questions. So, let's dive in. This is a really, really big question that I consistently get. and why I wanted to build this course. Like, what is the difference between fear and acting with your intuition? So let's talk about fear first. Fear is your psychological response to an event resulting in fight or flight. I don't know if you guys have heard this term before, but fight or flight is your neural response to an event. So it means you're either going to try and run away or you're going to face it with aggression. And it can change, it can vary, but these are the responses. And when we're operating from this mammalian reaction, we're not necessarily using our intuition, we're using something that is supposed to save us instinctually, right? So I wrote up a couple of examples that I want to lead you guys through, and we're going to talk about each one. So what if you guys, okay, and you can put this in the comment pause, your answer. What is a fear-based reaction to getting an unwanted text? Like, I don't know, let's say it's something aggressive. Is it ghosting? Is it jumping into a conversation? Or is it waiting until you can determine the right action? I want the fear-based response. Sorry, I have like all my liquids. All right, so we've got a little variation of everything. So let's unpack all of these, shall we? So let's go into the first slide. So ghosting. Now, this can also be determined as ego, which we will get into as well. But ghosting in this response is easily a flight because what's happening is you're shutting down. This isn't an intuitive reaction of saying, okay, this is not the proper time to respond. This isn't, I don't necessarily want this person in my life, maybe. This isn't really unpacking anything. This isn't really looking at the text as a whole. It's literally just running away from it. So ghosting is going to be more of like your flight response, where it's like, okay, I can't even deal with that. And then you're not checking in at all. It's your gut instinct, and you're just like, phew. And I understand that when I say gut instinct, that is going to be a little bit confusing because we're told to lead with your gut, but I'm going to get into why that's a little bit problematic later. So ghosting, it's pretty much flight. And again, everything is circumstantial, but for the purpose of this question, if it's just like ditching everything and then running away, you're not checking in with your intuition. Okay. Go to the next slide. So jumping into the conversation. Now let's say that this is a text from a significant other and they say something that kind of pisses you off. If you're jumping directly into the conversation, then it's more of a fight response, right, Lorraine? You're not giving, again, yourself time to check in with your intuition. You're not fully processing what this unwanted text is, and instead you're immediately aggressive. It's like all of that fire energy. And that's something that we want to stray away from because you're not giving yourself any moment to check in, okay? So then again, waiting until you can determine the right action, that is more of an intuitive-based response. This is something that you are mulling over, you're processing, and really connecting. And again, you're like, how do I do that? I'm going to be talking about that more in the future. Okay, so let's do this again. What is a fear-based reaction to waking up to a negative bank balance? Is it calling the bank? Is it immediately crying? Or is it analyzing all of your purchases? What do you think these are? And drop me some answers. Exactly, Lorraine. Perfect. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So And I love this. So, okay, first off, let's start with calling the bank, because it depends on if you're giving yourself some time to process, right? So if you say you would immediately call out of fear, are you giving yourself any time to look things over? So what you really need in order to connect with your intuition is a lot of patience and a lot of space and a lot of presence. So if you're giving yourself time to get really grounded and then give yourself a more appropriate response rather than acting directly out of an instinct, then you're going to be operating at a higher, more intuitive level. So I would say that calling the bank to kind of try and figure things out, if you're coming from a grounded place, would be the intuitive answer. But if you're calling out of fear, then you've already answered this question. Immediately crying, again, an emotional response, not to be shamed at all, but it is more of a flight, because rather than tackling the problem at hand, operating from an intuitive place, you immediately are just shut down. Analyzing all of your purchases is going to be a hugely anxiety-ridden approach. I am so guilty at this all the time, and I constantly have to ask myself, is this fear-based? Is this intuitive-based? Is this ego-based? But those are like the really big key things that you should be working from when you're trying to determine if you're operating at an intuitive level. You're like, is this fear-based? Because this might be fear-based. And generally, when it comes to terms of money, that's really where we start to operate from. And that's going to hinder a lot of your manifestation skills. So that's something you really need to remember. But great job, guys. All right, so we did all these. All right, so where do you feel fear? Now, I don't know if all of you guys have done a meditation where you check in with your body. We are going to be doing that modality a little bit later. But I wanted to let you know that fear is felt in the belly. That's where it could be misconstrued as your gut instinct, because it's like this very belly fear, it's stomach. It's almost like digestive. So this can drive you to fight or flight, and it blocks your intuition from getting a word in edgewise. It can also be felt here in your chest, so anxiety. I'll talk about where you can feel your intuition later, but if you're feeling tightness in your chest, or if you're feeling like this, stirring in your belly, you can almost always determine that it's more fear-based than intuitive. Okay, now, juicy goodness. This could probably be an entire class on its own, but we're going to begin the building blocks of unpacking what your ego is. So your ego is a false identity that is built on beliefs instead of truths. So just before I get into what that means, let's do another little quiz. So what is an ego-based reaction to your partner not texting you back, like a similar before? So they are over me because I'm not good enough. They must be busy and moving along, or they are cheating on me. What do you think is ego-based? Yeah, awesome, cool. You guys are doing great. All right, so they are over me because I'm not good enough. So if we're talking about beliefs versus truths, this is a belief that you've constructed. You say, I'm not good enough. You believe that you are not good enough. So what ends up happening? They are over you. That is an ego-based reaction. Now, when we're talking about truths versus beliefs, there is a strain of belief in every truth. It gets a little muddy, I'm not going to lie. But if universally everybody can agree on it, and it actually makes you, and it doesn't come from a place of like anxiety or fear or a construct that you've made in your mind, then it's gonna be less of an ego trip than normal. I know that was probably more complicated than it needed to be, but let's just move on to the next one. So they must be busy and moving along. It's probably going to be more truth-based, depending on how well you know this person. And the beautiful part of it is that you're able to move along and that you're not operating from fear or ego anymore, and you're allowing your intuition to flow freely because you're not being consumed by the cyclical ego. So your ego is going to be talking at you in your ear, telling you all of your beliefs, and your intuition is going to kind of mute that noise. And they are cheating on me. So this is not necessarily ego-based because, you know, this, I mean, obviously it could come from a belief if you think all men are cheaters, but for the purpose of this is more of a fear-based reaction. Like, depending on what your previous relationship status was, this could just be pulling at you from a different place. So that's why I put that one in there. All right, let's do one more. So these are this is more for like my entrepreneur babies, because I know that we like to use intuition in our work, but also get really upset when things don't work out. So if you're not gaining enough clients in a new program, what is an ego-based reaction to that? Is it no one appreciates my work? Is it no one has any money? Is it I should have worked harder? So type down your I need some more water. All right. Cool. Let's work through these. All right, it's a trick question. They're all ego-based. So one, no one appreciates my work. You've constructed a belief, and this is going to be a little bit of a manifestation tip for all of you entrepreneurs. If you believe that no one appreciates your work, and that's what keeps you operating at this level, that's going to hinder your manifestation skills. So the belief that no one appreciates your work is not a truth, because I'm sure that there are plenty of people that do. But you're creating a reality in which people don't appreciate your work in order to protect yourself. And that protection is ego-based. No one has any money. This is another belief. This is not true that no one has any money. If that were true, we would be not living in a capitalist society. So the belief that no one has any money protects your ego from people not purchasing your new program. And this one, I should have worked harder. So this one's really great because you're putting yourself down in an instance. I do this to myself all the time. Well, if you worked harder, it would have been better. And again, it's your ego, that little voice, trying to, in its own way, protect you from not filling up that program. Because if in an alternate reality you would have worked harder, things would have been different. So beliefs versus truths. So ego, fun fact, is felt in the front of your head, which can be misconstrued as an intuitive download, right? So if we're getting this is ego and your belly here is fear, that's where we get it's a little bit problematic, right? So this is actually where your anxiety is felt, because mammals, your development of the frontal cortex is, so your frontal cortex here, let me do some science. So your medulla oblongata, which is your reptilian brain, which connects to your spinal cord, is what operates off of your fight or flight. And as we have evolved as humans, we have grown bigger brains, we have gotten more surface area within our brains, and we have developed this thing called the frontal cortex, which processes thought and the ability to analyze. And with analyzation comes anxiety. So this blocks your intuition with a very loud noise. But again, it's also felt with tightness in the chest. So if ever you are trying to determine where you're feeling things in the body and you feel this tightness in your chest, you can determine that it's either your ego or fear. So now that we've gotten these out of the way, what is intuition? So intuition is a message from within that comes without shame or outside input. Do you feel it's a little bit more airy in here now? Intuition is going to come to you in a way that makes you feel supported and grounded, whatever the answer is. It's almost like it holds you in a little hammock. It doesn't scream at you. It doesn't jolt you, give you anxiety, make you scared. Intuition is like a mama holding its little baby. So, how do we distinguish intuition between fear and ego? So, is this voice bellowing with anxiety or a soft whisper? Have I been thinking about this a lot, or did this message come from nowhere? Is this message based off of a belief that I have, or does this answer make me afraid? So let's go through these really quick. So, talked about this a little bit already, but is this voice bellowing with anxiety or a soft whisper? Now, the training of intuition is important because in order to listen to your intuition, you have to be able to be still, which is why I'm going to walk you through a meditation a little bit later. If you are consistently consumed with the anxious thoughts that are cycling through your head, which cycle through everyone's head, mind you, just because you're closer with your intuition doesn't mean that these constant thoughts aren't going to be there anymore. It just means that you know how to separate them and you know who to listen to. My therapist gave me a really, really great example for this, and if you want to write this down, I think it's important. But think of all of the voices in your head like they're passengers on a bus and you're a bus driver. And whenever a voice gets a little too loud and it's not serving your highest good, you can let them off the bus. And you can tell them to shut up and sit down. You're the bus driver, you're in charge. Your intuition is going to be all the way in the back. So be sure to listen to that. So, as far as an intuitive download or perhaps a psychic download. Now, I think it's important for me here to discern between intuition and psychic abilities. Your intuition, everybody has. Everybody has an inner guide. With females, it's much stronger, but everyone has an inner guide. Psychic abilities are not everyone's gift. If you're able to connect with your intuition, you can allow psychic powers, if you have them, to come through better, but it's not that you'll be able to predict the future just because you are now more intuitive. So, for example, when I'm talking about like my instance of getting involved with that car accident, had I been closer to my intuition, could I have predicted the car accident? No, I don't think so. I'm not psychic. I don't think that that's my gift, and I don't think that I could have foreseen that. But I definitely could have avoided investing a shit ton of money in a car that I knew in my gut was not right for me. So, just to discern between those two for now. But when receiving messages, when receiving intuitive or psychic downloads, this message will generally come out of the blue. So I'm going to use the relationship example again, just because I feel like it's something we can all relate to. But if we're sitting on the couch waiting for our significant other to text us back, and that's all we can think about, and suddenly the idea pops into our head that they're cheating on us, it's not an intuitive download, it's not a psychic download, it's your anxiety creating problems in your head that are supporting your fears. However, if you're walking down the street and you're getting a message, then that's something that you need to listen to. Or if you're meditating, something you need to listen to. All right, so we unpacked this a little bit. We're going to go a little farther now. Is this message based off of a belief I have? So let's go into this now. Sorry, I'm like drinking coffee, so I'm getting a little bit of a dry mouth. All right, so a truth versus a belief. A truth is a universal statement that everyone can agree on, and a belief is constructed by personal experiences that can shape future experiences, i.e. manifestation. So we'll use the red car theory. So let's say that you think, or for example, you have this idea that there are so many red cars on the road. This is something that you always see red cards. You're going to continue to see red cards everywhere because that belief is shaping your reality. It highlights all of the red cards that are around you. I do this exercise on your own, but just walk outside with the belief that you're going to see a certain amount of red cards, and I guarantee you'll hit that number or higher. But that's a nice metaphor or example that I like to use for truth versus belief. So a belief would be that money is the root of all evil. The truth would be some people with money do evil things. So beliefs are combine opinion with conviction and leave no wiggle room for the imagination. And this is what blocks your intuition. Because if you firmly believe out of all of the experiences that you have, that money is the root of all evil, you will never be able to see the good in having money, and that blocks you. That doesn't let your intuition come in and tell you, all of the things that you could be achieving around money. You're actually shutting that down. You're telling it to shut up and go out the door. So important to know. So then finally, to go back, does this answer make me afraid? This one seems a little bit obvious because we did the whole, fear versus ego. But if you think of this answer, like if you think it's an intuitive download and it scares the shit out of you, it's generally fear-based. But if you feel supported and grounded with the answer that you got, it's almost like having a best friend holding your hand, or having, like I said, like a mother holding a baby, or like the universe wrapping you in a big, like swaddling you in a blanket. When you get an intuitive download, even if it might be quote unquote negative, you feel universally supported, and it's not going to make you feel super afraid. So again, we're going to do a lot of check-ins when we learn about these different modalities, but it's a good thing to note. All right. Now, this topic was brought up in my Instagram stories, and I was really excited to dive into this because I see this on Instagram all the time. There's always somebody that is doing this practice. So a dangerous form of ego is spiritual bypassing. So using spiritual ideas to bypass emotional wounds, act with judgment, or avoid healing is what we're talking about in terms of ego for right now. So the way I like to describe spirituality or describe witchcraft is that it is the ability to, without shame, dive into your own self-development and your own healing. And spiritual bypassing is essentially using jargon in order to skirt around it. And we'll go into some examples. So what spiritual bypassing does to your intuition. As with any form of ego, spiritual bypassing allows you to rest on your beliefs as a crutch rather than seek the truth. Truth allows your intuition to flow, just as we have seen in our ego. So spiritual bypass, like, I am all love and light, so I can't ever do anything negative. Saying that anxiety is not spiritual, or deflecting. So let's go into these and talk about why. So, I'm love and light, so I can't do anything negative. Now, this is problematic because there really is no positive or negative, good or bad. Everything is a variation of gray, and that's something to understand as a spiritual person. So number one. Number two, if someone, and I see this a lot with hate speech online, if someone is being outwardly racist and you are not going to call them out because you are all love and light, that is spiritually bypassing. Just plain and simple. So using love and light as a crutch to not act with your own truth, spiritual bypassing. Anxiety is not spiritual. So a lot of people think that because they're feeling jittery or they're not feeling high vibe, that's the word that I hear all the time, that they're not feeling high vibe, that that they're not being spiritual. But a very important part of spirituality, of witchcraft, is to sit with your less desirable emotions and to explore them and to understand these emotional wounds. And when you do that, when you explore these darker parts of yourself, you are, in essence, allowing this intuition to flow, because your intuition feels safe and able to come out. You're empowering that voice because you're letting your intuition know that everything's okay. All right. And now, deflection. So, deflection is when you're not taking responsibility for an action that you've done. So let's say, and I'll use the Instagram platform again just because it's something that I know very well. But if someone online says something you don't like and you bully them, and then you don't take responsibility for acting in a childish way because they're not enlightened and it's fine anyways, you're always going to want to look at both sides of the coin in order to be spiritual and in order to hone in on your intuition. Deflecting and saying that things aren't your problem because other people aren't woke or other people aren't enlightened is not a very enlightened way to get your point across. So that's just something to note as well. So that this is spiritual bypassing for you. So just to reiterate, spiritual bypassing, as with any form of ego, allows you to rest on your beliefs as a crutch rather than seek the truth. Okay, so the importance of trust. Now let's get into the modalities that I'm going to teach you. We're going to build you a gorgeous, beautiful morning routine that's going to make you an intuitive badass. So in the next slides, I will be teaching you different modalities to strengthen your intuition. You will need to develop trust in yourself in order to follow these instincts. So, EFT, we're going to tap your way to a clear conscience. Let me switch over to this mode. Cool, I'm full screen now, right? Let me pull up the photo booth, make sure I'm here too. Can you guys just let me know if you see me? Okay, cool, awesome. All right, so does anyone know what EFT is? Have you taken my classes on EFT before? Is this brand new to you? Okay, cool. So some of you are familiar. First, I'll just give you a brief introduction. EFT, or tapping, is a healing modality that mixes acupressure with an affirmation, essentially. What you do is you hit different points on your body, and they correspond with the emotional and emotional neural pathways. So when you're tapping on these acupressure points, what's going to be happening is you're going to connect your emotional responses with these affirmations and kind of reroute what your whole mind is thinking. And it's a really fun and great modality to break down all these fear-based responses and ego-based responses. So I guess we'll start with this kind of just general clearing. But before we do, I'm going to go over the points with you. So we start here at our karate chop. You top of head, inside eye, under nose, chin, breastbone, and under arm. Now you can do whichever hand, both hands. It doesn't really matter. You can do 3 to 2 fingers. You can tap about this, just like you're tapping someone on the shoulder. It's not exact, but it's very effective. So just with me really quickly, let's talk about how sometimes you tap with stones. Oh, that's amazing. I love that. Yeah, if you correspond a crystal with the intention that you're trying to unblock, then that's a really great way to go about it. As far as EFT goes for this particular like tapping into your intuition, we're just going to do a brief, easy go about. If you have water, drink it now. It's important to be hydrated. And then we're going to do a group tapping. So drink your water. I'm going to take a sip of mine. All right. Okay. So when we're ready. So start tapping on your karate chop here. Get in there, kind of focus. All right. So even though I feel disconnected from my intuition, and I wish that I had more of an intuitive response to things, I know that I am divinely supported and that my intuition is there and willing to help me whenever I need it, and that I can trust when my intuition comes that I know I will be supported. And even though sometimes I operate out of fear or even ego, I know that I will be ultimately serving my highest good if I remember to breathe, if I remember to trust in the universe, and if I remember to trust myself. All right. So that's just a really quick and easy tapping recipe. You can speak however you need to in order to lift those blocks. Do it as much as you want, but that kind of, I don't know if you can feel more soothing air, but I definitely can. Just affirming to yourself that the intuition that you have within you is right and ready is going to be so important for the rest of your growth. All right. So let's switch back to slides. Okay, so now let's do a meditation. I want to go through how to check in with your body. So when you're ready, I want you guys to just close your eyes. Take a deep breath in and out. Deeply in, as deep as you can. And deeply out again. All right. So now I want you to envision a very bright light circling up from the universe and going down to the very tippy top of your head. And then I want you to imagine it starting to fill your face, softening your forehead, your eyebrows, softening the muscles around your eyes and your ears, softening your cheeks and your jawline, softening any tension in your neck, going down your right arm and softening the muscles in your shoulder, circling around your elbow, up your arm to each little finger, and now over your left shoulder, softening those muscles, twirling around that elbow and into your forearm and into each little finger. And then going down your chest, making sure that your chest and back muscles are relaxed, skirting down your spinal cord, circling around your belly, quelling any fear, any anxiety, circling around your butt muscles, down your thighs, around your knees, down your calves, and into each toe. And now from your toes, growing roots down, down, down into the center of the earth, grounding you, keeping you supported, keeping you aligned, keeping you in charge of yourself. Take a deep breath in and out. And now open your eyes when you're ready. All right, everyone. Type in the comments how you're feeling, just so I know you're back with me whenever you are ready. I don't want to rush you out of a meditation. And then we will go to the next slide. All right, who's back? We're back. Feeling lighter. Awesome. Great. Cool. Fabulous. All right, now we have essentially what we have done in a very short amount of time is we have broken down some blocks around our intuition. We have now grounded ourselves and are feeling supported and ready to get some divine downloads. And now I'm going to teach you exactly how to do that. So, I am huge into divination. That is my magic. I practice with pendulums and the tarot consistently. Okay, write in the comments, do you guys do pendulums or tarot? What do you guys do, if anything at all? And just so I can see where you guys are at. Tarot and runes, fabulous. Tarot, no pendulums, cool, cool, cool. Awesome. So most people are, so you're familiar. Awesome. All right, so the way that I got started with my intuition was with my dear old pendulum. I love him so much. Actually, I'm not sure if it's a him or a her, but we have a very strong connection. Now, I love pendulums, and you can use, I'm trying to see if I have a necklace around here, but you can use any chain that is weighted as a pendulum. You can use any earring, you can use anything. It's a really good way to connect with your inner guides because you are trusting this to tell you something. So he and I have a very special connection, so I'm just gonna say, show me a yes. Now the way that this pendulum is spinning right now is gonna give me a yes answer. Okay, and now, why don't you go ahead and show me a no? Now I focus my intention, spinning the opposite way, and now I know my pendulum is giving me a yes or a no answer. So now I'm going to ask, see, now it's stopping. If I need to consult with my guides or I need to consult with my own intuition, and I don't know, let's say I'm looking for a job or I'm starting to date a guy. Let's say I'm on Tinder and I'm like, is this guy a creep? I'm going to ask my pendulum, say, pendulum, what do you like? And it always has to be in a yes or no question or a yes or no order. And your pendulum will give you an answer. And that's basically your intuition coming from within and out and expressing itself, okay? So obviously it's not going to be able to answer because that is a hypothetical question. But let's see. Actually, you know what's fun? Why don't you guys give me a yes or no question and I'll answer with my pendulum. Okay. So, am I in the right relationship? So I'm going to focus on the question and ask my pendulum, is she in the right relationship? All right, I'm getting a good yes spin. Ooh, it's getting bigger. So there you go. So that's how your pendulum is going to work. And yeah, you're in the right relationship, so great. So this is your pendulum, very easy yes or no questions. This is going to help develop a relationship with your intuition because you're going to be giving it a voice. So I personally, you're welcome. So I personally recommend doing that to kind of get started on connecting with your intuition. Now, for those of you that are a little bit more advanced and you're using the tarot or you're using runes, the way that I began to develop my intuition in addition was to journal on a daily tarot card. So I'm just going to pick one at random. All right, this is a good one for practicing intuition. For those of you that are not familiar with the tarot, this is probably the best way to strengthen your relationship with your intuition, because since you're not familiar with the tarot, you will only have intuitive responses to what the tarot is saying. So I know most of you are familiar with the Five of Pentacles, but let's look at the imagery and unpack it. So obviously we see this kind of like stained glass church window. So the first thing that I think of is like holy, or I think religion. I think, you know, for some people that's a safe haven. And then I see two people who look a little disheveled. They're on crutches, their clothes are tattered, they're in the snow. So it's almost like people that have been ostracized or people that have been left out of safety or warmth. So my intuition is telling me immediately, like the first grab that I get from this card is a feeling of despair and a feeling of sadness even. And when you're working with the tarot in this way, what I want you to do is to choose a daily card and just write down your intuitive responses to what the imagery is, and then see if you can point those out in your day. And that, again, is going to strengthen in a more artistic and a little bit more of a three-dimensional way what your intuition can do to you as far as communicating with you. All right. So now, and I highly stress this every time I work with a client, I always talk about morning routines because I think they're the building blocks for success. And I think that if you are to begin your relationship building your intuition, these are very important things to start doing. So even if you carve out 15 minutes in your morning to do a 3-minute tapping exercise, meditate to connect and ground, just as we did, and then practice some sort of divination to receive these messages, and then journal to set them in your mind. So then you're receiving, you're putting it out into the physical, and then you're re-downloading, and it becomes this very cyclical kind of exchange that you've got, right? Cool. So that's where I would suggest beginning. And then, let's see what we've got. So now that we've been through this entire hour-long class, is like my longest class I've ever done, does anyone have any questions for me? Feel free to put them in the chat. For those of you that were unable to make the class on time that I'm recording for, feel free to email me. I'll open up my inbox to you. I'm more than happy to answer questions. Obviously, I do very much like the Facebook group setting, because if you ask questions in there, you can, everyone can see the answers just in case they have, what's it called, the same question. But feel free to inbox me and I'm happy to answer. Do you hold workshops in person? I do. Depending on where or when, but I have at different yoga studios, and I've done in-person tarot readings for events. I like doing it in the online space because then everyone can attend. I'm in the East Coast, so that's not always the most ideal place for people to be. People are all over. But yeah, I have definitely done workshops in person. Okay, this is good. How can you distinguish between your intuition and a message from a spirit guide? I know they are connected, but they feel different to me. So this is a really interesting question. I equate, so first of all, I'm just going to describe to you my spirit guides. Not everyone knows theirs. I don't have the gift to be able to tell you what yours are, but my friend was able to tell me that my spirit guides are pixies and my matron goddess Freya. And when you think about your relationship with your spirit guides, you can kind of understand what their personality is. And your intuition is going to have your own personality that's divine within you. So it's almost like if you're listening to yourself versus a friend versus another friend. So you're going to be able to pick out their personality traits. So like Freya is a warrior goddess. She is, she always communicates me in terms of animals. So every time I get if I get a download during a meditation of like an owl, I'm like, oh, that's Freya speaking to me. Or if I get little taps on my shoulders from my pixies that are like, lighten up, that's their way of communicating with me. And what I'm going to say to help you get closer to distinguishing that is to build closer relationships with your spirit guides and with your intuition. So when they do tell you, or when they do give you messages, you can know where they're coming from. And yeah, so that's my answer for that. Oh, good. I'm glad that answered your question. Does anyone else have a cue for me? Do I work with crystals, and what is my favorite? So it took me a really long time to get on the crystal bandwagon. But I do have a couple that I work with. I am a trauma survivor. I was raped 3 years ago, and I'm also a Scorpio, triple Scorpio. And I found myself so connected to the stone Shiva Lingam. It is, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but it's a river stone. It's very masculine fire energy, but it is like the most healing for trauma survivors. And when I hold it, it's like I can feel the waves around me. Shiva Lingam is by far my most favorite grounding stone. I adore it. I also have a lot of fun with kyanite and amethyst. I'll put them under my pillow if I ever want a lucid dream. But tried and true, citrine. I know it's kind of a basic stone, but I put it in my water and infuse my water with success. So I just feel like I'm drinking money and success constantly and prosperity, and it just makes me feel energized. But those are my favorites. Are there any meditations to help find your spirit guides? So yes, there are. I have not mastered them, but a lot of people think that magic and woo are a lot more complicated than they actually are. But if you simply sit in meditation for long enough and just ask for messages from your spirit guides or who your spirit guides are, and you learn to quiet the noise enough, you'll get images and you'll get people extending their hand to you. I haven't written this yet, but I am going to write a post about my relationship with Freya. And she reached out to me so many times. So much so, like she almost slapped me in the face with her presence so many times. So much so that like I would see her name in different places. So if a goddess wants to work with you or a spirit guide is there and wants to be seen, generally you just have to open your eyes and lift that intuition up. So these practices are going to help you be able to see those messages. But I would start, if you're doing the meditation, I would start grounding, and then maybe like 2 minutes after you've like really rooted yourself, simply in your mind ask who your spirit guides are, and that will help you. Ooh, you're welcome. All right. Do we have any more questions before we go? We've gone over an hour. This has been so spectacular. Dun, dun. You guys are the best. I love holding these workshops. Thank you so much for attending and being so interactive. If you guys liked this space, let me know. I started doing this on a lower level trial, but if this is something you like and you would attend more workshops, please feel free to let me know. Feel free to leave a review about this workshop by either DMing me or emailing me or on my Instagram or whatever. And then I can make these happen more. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for attending, and I will be seeing you guys at a later date. Bye.